Good day. This is the Spiritual Artist Podcast with Chris. Great day here. I am very excited with today's guest. She's a good friend that I've had way back. And let me tell you how far back. Rebecca Collins was actually my first podcast interview. So I did a horrible thing today and I re-listened to that interview and oh my gosh, saw how stiff I was. But let me introduce Rebecca and then we're going to talk about where we are today. So Rebecca Collins is a mixed media artist working in Mosaic, collage, watercolor, and digital arts. She is a teacher. She teaches at the Creative Arts Center in Dallas. There is a retail store called Makers Connect. It's a studio that she teaches at. And she also has an incredible home studio in her house. We could talk about that in a minute too. And I'm sure anybody listening to this that is a teacher, Rebecca can share her tips with that. So good morning, Rebecca. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here.
I am happy, okay. So I listened to the podcast and it was like, hi, I am Chris and I am here with
I'm so glad I
Rebecca.
didn't listen to it. I probably would feel the same way.
Well, I think it was during COVID or
I
that
think it
we
might
did.
have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thrilled to have you back because we have a long history and we have so much to talk about. And I want to share with our listeners. I love having artists in here because while I also have instructors and coaches, having artists in here that just talk about their experience, what it's like emotionally, what it's like thought wise as you're in the studio. Rebecca, you're a teacher, so I want to talk about that first because
Okay.
I think you're a fantastic teacher.
Thank you. And you've taken a class with me. So.
I have. So I'm justified. I've taken several classes and you have that wonderful studio at your house. It's upstairs in an addition, big room, folks. How do you do it? Because I noticed that, you get a varied group of students in there, different skill levels. How do you navigate that?
Well, I kind of try to show up for each student on their level. I had a really good mentor and teacher myself, Katrina Doran, back in 2007. And she had this real knack of teaching, not having one teaching style, not having one teaching mode, but figuring out what each student needs. And I can't say I'm as good as she is at that, but I keep that in the back of my head. And I try to do that. I try to, there's always going to be a squeaky wheel in a class, right? That needs more hand holding, and more attention. And you got to be present for that and still spread yourself to the quiet person over in the corner that is afraid to ask a question. So you kind of have to navigate that. And I'm learning as I go with that. But I do love teaching. I find I always learn from my students, for one thing. They always teach me something.
Well, I love there's a couple of things you said there. I love that you talked about being present, and the older I get, the more I realize the importance of that as a teacher, but also as an artist.
Yeah,
right?
True.
Just being right there in that moment and experiencing and not being in your head in the future or in the past where you were like shamed for doing art or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So how do you navigate that presence? Do you just feel it?
Being present in the moment while I'm teaching or while I'm making my art?
Both.
Being in the moment as a teacher is not always as easy as being in the moment as an artist. Because as a teacher, you are watching the clock because you want them to finish their project or you want them to get to a certain point. And so I'm always kind of watching the clock and thinking, okay, this workshop's ending in an hour and a half and they're here. And I'm so focused on that I'll shout out, you guys are doing great. You're right where you need to be. And I was like, well, they don't care. Because they are in the moment, As an artist, being in the moment is something I'm kind of focused on this year in terms of slowing down. I want to, to back up, I'm really good at production. Back in the 90s, I had a handmade greeting card line and I was making handmade cards and selling. I had reps all over the country. My biggest client was in England, Paper Chase, and she would order a dozen. She had mini shops. She was like the hallmark of England or whatever. And so I would have to make a dozen. And so I mean, it would be hundreds and hundreds of cards that I would ship over there, and she would make my year every year. And so I had to learn how to do production. I had to learn how to repeat one thing over and over again. And today I don't repeat the exact same thing with my art. So it's not like making identicals, but that experience taught me how to work efficiently, and how to, so if I'm like working on holiday ornaments or something, I can, I do mosaic work. And so I know how to, do all the grouting at once, like several, and then grout them all at once, prep I know how to do production, and I know how to work efficiently. But I also do larger, more important works that are like higher end. And that's what I want to do more of, is less small things that at that affordable price point, because the expensive stuff sells too. My more serious works also sell. And probably, as you can tell just by the way I talk, you and I both have this. So one reason we get along so well, we have this buzzy energy, and this kind of like,
Yeah.
I mean, you do so
I'm
much.
getting tense just thinking about
I know,
a dozen.
I mean, you've written a book, you've got a podcast, you were doing shows for artists for a while, you do your own paintings, you're a dad. I mean, you have so much, and so, and so I'm trying to, my whole focus at the first of this year is like, I have this, my animal spirit. Everybody thinks of it, animal spirit. What's your animal spirit? Well, my animal spirit this year is the turtle.
Oh, wow. You have a different one? Do you change it?
Yeah, I don't have one. Yeah, I have it's more like a mascot. He's really more like a mascot than a spiritual thing, or, Indian kind of thing. No, it's just more my mascot is to think of the turtle, because he did win the race, and to try to go slow and steady. So I used to have this mantra. It's like, the more you do, the more you can do, the more you take on, the more you do, the more you can do. And that's true. That is so true. It's a very, very true thing. And I see people who get in these sluggish ruts where they're not doing anything, and you just got to like, just start the momentum, just start moving, just start doing it, because the more you do, the more you can do. It is a true statement, and it no longer serves me. I realized that I got that, I've got that. That saying that in my head no longer serves me at all. And what I need to do is slow down. I need to slow down. I need to take on larger works that are going to take months instead of hours, that I'm going to be working on day in and day out, and bigger pieces. And I have a series I've been working on that, where I combine animals like the raven, or different animals really, and then I combine all these techno things, circuit boards and technical bits and stuff. And the whole purpose is to kind of talk about our relationship with nature and how man is encroaching on everything, and they're real pretty pieces. And the goal is to just kind of draw people in with the beauty of the mosaic and the intricacy, but then have that layer of meaning just kind of out there that they can grab onto that or not, just however they want to approach it. So that's what I'm focused on. Is just
well, it's funny. You said a couple things here. So I'm like trying to tag them in my head. Okay. First, I love that you talk about, your animal of the year. My spiritual animal is an owl. And I actually have one of your drawings I bought of an owl. I don't know if you remember that. In fact, I think I'm going to scan it in and slide it over the screen during this video so people can see what a wonderful illustrator you are, what creative and colorful. But so I love that. But what I like the most is what you said, is that you had this mantra, and you revisited it, and you thought, is this still true? Is this still true for me? And you're letting yourself kind of let it go.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I consider you a spiritual artist. Okay. Because we, as spiritual artists, we do have to keep constantly re-examining our belief systems.
Yeah, we do. And while it is still a true statement, it's just not something I need to tell myself. And you talk a lot about artist DNA, and my Band-Aid's going, I cut myself.
Oh, no.
But you talk about our artist DNA, and that is part of who I am. And it's it's okay. And a lot of my friends have been like, are you sure you need to slow down for the whole year? Maybe you've gotten it. And it's like, it's not who you are. And, and yeah, I mean, my DNA is a kind of a frenetic, this energy that just, you know, taking on a lot, doing this and then doing that and experimenting and, just going at the speed of light. And I'm not going to say that I won't still have that. I can't deny that as a part of who I am. But by consciously, and it started with the physical, because I'm like, I'm at a point in my life where I'm the fastest person getting out of the car. Well, I've always been the fastest person getting out of the car and going to the door, and you're walking with the group, and you find I'm 5 paces ahead of everybody. And as I get older, that's more and more and more true. Especially with my partner, my husband. He's a lot slower than I am, and so I'm physically slowing down. So when I feel like and that's a good thing as we age, to try to physically slow down, because sometimes, we get in trouble when we don't. And so instead of just like walking at a clip, I'm trying to physically move slower. And in doing that, I'm hoping it gets into here, it goes into my mental space, and that it will help me be present, be slower in the work I produce, not feel like I have to push through and get something done by a certain time. And right now I have no deadlines until October. I'm not doing,
Wow.
I'm not doing any sales.
Well, yes, it's funny you talk about deadlines. So, I have this solo show and it's September, and I have the whole summer, and I busted like you. I busted tails 6 weeks ago, and I've got 6 of them mostly done, and I only need 7.
Oh, there you go.
But I think, it's that same energy. You're right. My husband has often said to me, "You do everything so fast."
Yeah.
He's like, like I'll clean the kitchen, but I don't clean the kitchen. I clean the kitchen.
Yeah.
And I hear you. I think when we get older, for many reasons, right? Our bodies just don't. I don't know about you, but I used to get up on a Saturday morning, and I would for 8 hours in a row, I would just clean the entire house, do painting and all this. I can't do it.
Yeah. I still go fast at everything, but I don't have the stamina. So I can't go fast for 8 hours. I can go fast for 4 hours, So I find that it's not so much not moving at the same pace is difficult as we age, but it's just going as long. Whereas my husband, who goes much slower, he has the stamina of an ox. We go on vacation, and, like I say, I want to be 20 paces ahead of him. And I'm just like, let's take it all in. And then after about 4 hours of walking, wherever we are, I'm like, where can we sit down? And he's just still trugging.
Well, that's what did you say, the turtle or the tortoise, right? The tortoise, slow and steady, wins the race, right?
It really does. It really does.
So I like something else you said that I have played with a lot, which is a very interesting concept that most people don't think about. You said you're going to force your body to slow down until your mind catches on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny because mostly in the West here, we talk about our mind forcing our body. Our mind is going to tell our body what we're going to ignore, that we're hungry. We're going to work through it. We're going to ignore that we're in pain. We'll take an aspirin. But you're saying the reverse, which is actually a very holistic, way of thinking, right? That your body can actually, I believe your body can heal your mind.
Yeah.
I went to, been feeling a little crotchety, I would say. Crotchety is the word this week. And on Tuesday, I went to my yin yoga class, and I went in there, and some woman had the audacity to ask me to move over. Right. I'm like, I was thinking, oh, Chris, you're so not in the zone right now. You're irritated that this woman's asking you to share.
It hasn't even started and you're mad.
And share space. But it's funny. I go through yin, and the body can actually calm and relieve the mind. I don't know how it works. I don't know how it works, but I did the poses. And when I left, I felt almost like I had taken a hot shower, and just all that negative that you're talking about just washed away.
Yeah. It's true. It's true.
So are you literally, you get up in the morning and do you catch yourself doing something quickly and then you pull back?
Definitely. It starts with a dog walk, I'm out there walking the dogs, and I'm like, okay, have to remind myself, it's a chore. You do it every day, but it's like, this could be my walk too. It's not, it's for them, but if I will just slow down and, bend over and pick up that feather that's on the ground, or notice that the neighbors have put in some new daisies in their pot or something, it's like, you have to remind yourself to do that though, instead of being in your head planning your day, while the dogs are doing their thing. You're like, okay, what do I got to do when I get home? And that's often what I do with my morning dog walks, is I just rattle off a list of the 5 things I've got to get done before noon, and so when I don't do that, then little surprises will show up on the walk, and you're like, oh, okay. This is my walk too, so I should take it in and enjoy it. So
do you ever use, I will share with the listeners, if they haven't heard the first interview, that you do these incredible mosaic work and you do collage work. Have you ever done that as a way to get present? Like, have you ever used your collage work or your mosaic tile as though it was a walk with the dog?
As though it was a walk with the dog. Well, that's one thing about mosaics. They are very therapeutic. So by the nature of the medium, it has that effect on you, because you're basically working a puzzle. If you've ever worked a jigsaw puzzle with your grandmother or something, that's when I used to do it with my grandmother. It's just a very slow, there's nothing else going on. And that's how mosaics are. It's just a very meditative process. But for me, the one thing that does that more than anything is drawing. If I'm in a figure drawing class or something, or just drawing, in my sketchbook, that is the one activity that shuts everything down. To draw well, you are really, it's such a hand-eye, it's such a mental activity. Like with mosaics, I can cut and place things, and my head can still be thinking about other stuff. But when you're drawing, you don't think about anything else. So that's one I like to draw, because that's the thing that can really slow me down. So
that's, it's interesting. I was thinking about, you talked like a puzzle. And when I do my artwork, I always feel like it's a puzzle. I paint and I create all kinds of weird shapes, but then I start cutting in and out, and starting to find geometric patterns in there. And it's a process of going from a very loose, messy thing into like you can see behind me, into a formed thing with different shapes, but it's like they're found shapes, and always different. But I get lost in that. And then I'll realize, oh, if I cut this and add a darker tone here, this will seem like it's pulled back. And so I think that's
that it has a very mosaic quality to it.
Yeah,
like each of those shapes could be a piece of tile or a piece of glass,
I know. I've always been attracted. That's why I took that mosaic class with you. It's wonderful. So I think when we talk about that, like you're saying with the drawing, for you, that hand-eye coordination, you're constantly watching the curve, learning how to see is how they describe it, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And for the listeners, can you explain that concept of teaching a person how to see what they're really seeing?
Well, when we draw, like if I'm drawing, okay, so one exercise that's great, and what is it, Betty Edwards, that's like drawing on the left side of the brain or the right side of the brain, whatever.
I remember the title.
She has a lot of exercises that have become common practice in drawing classes in college level and stuff. And one exercise is to take an image and turn it, like if I'm going to draw a face, take an image of that face and turn it upside down and draw it. My husband and I both did this with Einstein. We have this image of Einstein.
Upside down.
Upside down. And we have them on our computer screens, and we flipped it upside down and we drew the subject upside down. And when you do that, when you draw the subject upside down, you're no longer, what is the word they use? Symbolizing, or you're no longer going, the nose goes here, and you think in your head, what a nose looks like, right? You know what an eye looks like. So as we draw, we tend to draw in what we think an eye looks like, what we think a nose looks like. And so we're drawing, because we're looking at the subject and we're like, that's where their nose goes. But if you drawing from an image and drawing that image upside down, you no longer see nose. You just see shape. And so you have to learn to see. And if you're doing a figure drawing class, you can't hang your model from the rafters and draw her upside down, because that would be cruel. So you have to learn to see. You have to learn to not put down you think you know, but what is actually there. And you often do that by going very slow. And there's another practice we do, contour drawing, where you don't even look at your page. It's a line drawing technique where you only look at the subject. You are not allowed to look at your page. And then when you look down at your page, you're like, oh my gosh, you get these wonderful distorted drawings, sometimes, and the nose is kind of going off over here because you didn't quite do it right, but they're always just full of life. And I love contour drawing. And if you do it a lot, you actually look down at your page and it's like, oh, well, that's pretty good. I got it, So, but yeah, so there's different exercises and stuff to teach you how to see. And then that carries on in life. It's not just while you're drawing. People don't slow down enough, I think, to see things out in the world. There's visual people, and then there's auditory people. I don't know how to hear. I don't listen to music and performances and stuff the way other people might, that are more in tune to sound and stuff. I'm a very visual person, so I've always been very much aware of looking at stuff in my environment in a way other people might not, like seeing a piece of rusty metal and going, oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Most people are like, it's a piece of rusty metal, Rebecca. I was like, no, look at it. Look how the paint's peeling, so just appreciating what's out there.
So that's all an extension really of learning how to see, because if you're seeing a rusty piece of metal, you're actually, instead of seeing it as junk, like what the mind would say, junk, trash, something not good, you're looking at with totally fresh eyes.
Exactly. Being able to see things with fresh eyes. That's part of the goal. And that's something as a teacher, you try to teach people to do, even if it's not a drawing class, if it's a mosaic class, you're still trying to teach people how to see and just how to use the design basics. So,
I like what you said too, because it goes back to the original conversation with, as a teacher, you said you want to be present with each student. And part of that is seeing them for who they are, right? Just totally letting go of any misconception or, judgment.
Exactly. And sometimes my squeakiest wheels, it would drive some people crazy. I'm kind of patient, I realize, and I'm not patient with myself, and I'm not patient in my own work, but I feel like sometimes with students, sometimes the squeakiest wheels and some of the most trying personalities, I really like those people. I'm not like, oh, I find I have a lot of patience with people. I really do.
That sounds like a mantra for your next year, right? Letting yourself
be patient with myself.
Being patient with yourself. Well, that's part of it, isn't it? Slowing down.
Yeah.
Being patient. I was talking to my husband. We went to Santa Fe last week, and we were always talking about art and the process. And he was saying how some of the students that he teaches in the ACT, learning how to act, they get to a certain level and then they don't act as much. They actually release. And I thought, that's interesting. I think there's that temptation we all have. When we start out, like as an artist, at first we're cranking it out, right? We are pushing. And what you're describing to me, where you're at, is you're kind of slowing down and just enjoying instead of rushing to have a big pile of stuff, it's more about really experiencing that one piece that you're working on.
Exactly. And I think commercial artists that have to make money by selling their work, doing fairs and stuff, there is that tendency to just try to produce a large body of work. So you have stuff and you want to have fresh stuff. We don't like our old stuff as much as we like our brand new stuff, right?
Yes, we don't. I'm going to give a quick shout out to Dana. She's an interview, and I'm going to link her at the end of this interview, that I interviewed about how to have a show booth. And she told me this idea. You said we always want to crank out new stuff. She gave me this wise wisdom that I'm going to share because it worked for me. I just had a booth at the Pride Arboretum last week, and I sold really well. And what I did is I made prints of stuff that I did years ago.
Yeah.
And Dana said to me, she goes, why not? If it's a successful item that people bought right away, it's a good thing. Why not make residual money on it? Make prints. And I was like, no, I don't sell prints. I only sell
values made work. But yeah.
Exactly. Right. I was all up in there. Oh, it has to be an original. And I'm like, but why? There's people that want that. They love your images, but they don't want to spend, $500. And so I laid out, Rebecca, I had these little prints laying out, 50 of them.
Uh-huh.
I had 3 left. 3.
Were they the where's mine? Do you see that?
Yes. They were
Are they
like
the little,
that.
yeah,
Right.
those are great.
And people just,
Did you get over to RO2 and see Bradford Smith's show? Brad Smith does drawings, and you may not know him. He's an artist. He does a lot of drawings. His drawings are that size. The frame they're that size. They sell for $200 and something. And he had a whole bunch of them at RO2 Gallery, and the whole show was just these little, and there were.
but they were originals, right?
They were original. They were
Yeah.
original sketches. Yeah, original sketches, and red dots everywhere. He sold a lot of them. So.
Yeah,
So
well,
some people don't mind the small, intimate sizes, and I work pretty small as a rule, like especially compared to you and your huge canvas.
I know. Well, what I hear all the time is, where will I fit that in my house?
There's that too.
And when you do something small, I have one of your mosaics I bought down at Makers Connect. It's the heart, and it's hanging in my bathroom. And it's small, right? It's only 4 by 4 or whatever. It doesn't take a lot
walk for that.
Yeah,
exactly.
There's
that. There's not just budget constraints, but there's the constraints of how big is a house you're living in, and
space.
How much space do you have? And so by making it more, more affordable and smaller pieces, you're going to reach a lot more people.
Yeah, and as Dana said, using prints as well as they're well done, right? And you can make residual money. So I'm sharing that with the listeners. That's a way that you can make money off of something. It's once, just because I for years, how I've been painting.
I know, you just
20 years.
Yeah,
I have so many images that are beautiful that have been just thrown, like they're back on my digital drive, and I just pulled 20 of them out. But because they're still good.
Because they're older, I think. Because they're older, they're almost like your forgotten children, And so now you get to, celebrate them again. And because they're older, they're not that fresh new thing. So maybe you don't make your brand new, maybe you don't make this year and last year's work available in that format. But the older work,
that's a smart idea. Yeah.
Maybe
the new stuff, they have to wait.
They have to wait, yeah, and then that gives your collector that has spent, $3,000-$5,000 on a piece, the feeling that they have something that isn't out there yet, So, but it's your work, you retain the copyrights, and you can do whatever you want, So
yeah, I actually texted Dana and said, "Oh my gosh, you were right. I should have listened to this 3 years ago."
Well, you were doing the pillows for a while.
Yeah,
I have one upstairs. Yeah,
their cost is a little higher, and they're bigger. They're bigger.
Yeah. So, they're bigger. That's cool. I might need to get another one.
They are bigger, definitely. So we were talking. One of the things we were talking about earlier, and that I wanted to bring up in this interview is you have been doing therapy or health therapy for years, right?
8 years. Yeah, cancer treatment. Yeah, I've been doing infusions and just maintenance drugs, really, for stage 4 cancer. So it's a terminal diagnosis, and I will always be on something. And a lot of people don't understand stage 4 cancer because so many people have early stage cancers that are really, in fact, curable. You get done with your chemo, you get done with your treatment, and it's I think anytime you have cancer, though, it's always in your rearview mirror, and you're always kind of worried it's going to come back. Well, I'm not worried about that because I was diagnosed at stage 4 from the beginning, so it's no longer over my shoulder, in my rearview mirror. It's with me all the time, and so yeah.
And it hasn't slowed you down.
It has not slowed me down. No.
I mean, you talk about cranking stuff out. And what I wanted to share with you is, I was talking about how we bring our bodies. Becca and I had a talk before this interview, and I was talking about how we bring our bodies to the creative process. And in my book, I actually added a couple chapters in January, and one of the chapters is about your body, because I realized that when we work in the studio, we are bringing our bodies into the studio as well. And we think it's all about the mind, but literally how physical we are, whether we can hold a big canvas or a big brush, the size, that the energy we have, it's all demonstrated in the body. And the best example that I've spoken to groups about this is that I have a tremor in my hand and it shakes. It's not doing it too bad today, but there are days when it's quite bad.
Yeah.
And it's called non-essential tremor. And when I go to speak to groups, I like to bring that up because I've realized there's a lot of people that struggle with some condition.
That's
Many.
true. Everybody, that's the thing. When you get sick, you start to notice, or you start having something, you start to notice everybody's got something. Everybody's dealing with something, you know. There are a lucky few that are, you know, it's the picture of health and don't have any issues, but their time will come.
Yeah. And,
That's called being human. That's called being human, you know.
And what I like to encourage people, because if you think you can't be creative because of a physical, I always get like, there's a guy on Instagram that he has no arms, and he's drawing with his toes.
Wow.
And I think we can work around those limitations, and people do it all the time. And so I love telling the class that, like with my tremor, I realized that I learned a different brush stroke. I do a sideways brush stroke with a flat, straight edge brush to get such straight lines. And it's slower, it's more meditative, and I have to be more careful, but I get what I want. And so I realized that that's part of my creative DNA, that my body has forced me to adjust the way I approach creativity.
Yeah.
You know, and
it's not, there's nothing lost.
No.
There's nothing lost. It's just changed.
It's just changed.
It's just changed.
So how do you think, like with your situation, has it affected how you see the world, or how you paint or draw? Or
definitely. I mean, yeah, with my diagnosis, it's talk about being present. I've always been this person of like, where am I going to be in 5 years? It's like, well, I don't know if I have 5 years. Like, I'm like present. It does help me be more present, and it has helped in terms of being present in my artwork as well. And it's also changed the subject. You know, it's like, as you know, like when I first got diagnosed, the first year is a hard year, and all I had the energy to do was just sit up I was always at the doctor, just sit in the chair as I'm getting infusion and just draw cells. I was always drawing this happy cells, you know, and they were very simple drawings at first, but then they started evolving into these abstract. It was my doorway, my drug. What is it called? What is that when you? What's that beginning drug?
I know what you mean, like a door.
Yeah, intro drug to
gateway
drug to abstract art. It was drawing these little cells, because I've always looked at abstract art. I'm like, well, what does it mean? You know, it's like, well, for me, these little cellular abstracts actually have a great deal of meaning, you know, I mean, but it's still abstract art. I've been doing with watercolor and collage and even Mosaic. And so, yeah, the illness has changed the artwork that I do and the way that I approach it. And for the most part, after not being able to do much for a whole year, other than these sketches, any day that I can show up and make art, that's a good day. You know, that is a good day. And almost every day I am creating something, you know, so.
Make me get
I have a lot of good days.
That's good.
A lot of good days right now, and I have a lot ahead of me. I know that. So
that just reminds me, and I've told you this before, but I just would love for you to do a solo show with all those drawings.
I want to do that. I want to actually do that. So in addition to the cellular drawing, now I don't do the cells while I'm in the chair. I had 2 years of oral medications, and then I had to go back to the chair and get the infusion. And it's just such a time suck, you know, it doesn't hurt. It's not hard. I don't have lots of side effects from the maintenance drugs, but it's just like 3 weeks. Okay, it's time to go. And so when I went back into the chair and getting the infusion, I started doing self-portraits. So I would draw myself, and now I'm tired of myself. So I'm drawing myself and friends, and I'm drawing some of my friends. But I have over a year of self-portrait sketches. So I'd like to do the show. And some of the sketches will have like cells in the background and stuff. And but I'd like to do the solo show of the abstract works and the self-portraits. Because then it would be some figurative work and some abstract work. And the self-portraits are like their personal journey. As some of them are like, I look good, and some of them are just like, yeah, it's like, oh, that was a bad week, you know, and that's just the way it is, you know. And so it's like a journal, but without the writing. So,
oh my gosh. So, okay, listeners, if you have a space and you're looking for an exhibit, this is the one,
I just need to,
because it's got,
I need to start pitching it. I really just, I've got some places in mind, and I keep thinking I'm going to pitch it and try to get it done, try to get a showing maybe a year out, where I have time to really organize, because I have the body of work. But I'd like to have it done in October, which is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So,
oh, see, it's wonderful. You got a cause associated with it, and your work is so beautiful, and the colors. Of course, you'd have to. It's probably not all framed, right? Would you frame it?
yeah,
Or
I'd have to do some frame. Some of it is actually quite a bit of the most recent watercolors I went ahead and framed for the studio tour. So some of it's framed, yeah. And like some of the self portraits, I don't know if I would just rip them from the sketchbook or if I would scan them and then print them and maybe print them larger. I don't know about that. I'll have to think about that one. So
wow, no, that would be.
I really want to do that. I really want to do that. And I'm like, well, if I don't, I'm on year 8 of survival. So it's like, maybe I'll do it on my 10th year. Maybe I'll working at it and do it as a 10-year celebration.
Well, you need to send me some of those, and I'll scan, or send me them, and I'll put them in this video, so on YouTube people can see some of your work, because it's always so wonderful and colorful. And I've seen some of your, on Instagram, you're posting some of your friends drawing, like you're drawing your friends and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really great that I've switched over to the friends. I was getting bored after over a year and a half of self-portraits. I was getting kind of bored with myself. So now I just go through my phone and look for recent snapshots of people and pick someone to draw. And it's like having them there with me, when you're in your first year of treatment, you often take somebody with you to infusion because it's like 3 hours, it's half the day and it's boring. And you're scared that first year and you want the support. Well, it's like, now I do this by myself. But by drawing my friends, it's like having somebody right. And of course, during COVID, I felt so bad for the newbies that were going through their first year newbies. That makes it sound like, I don't know, the new people that were diagnosed, that were going through it during COVID, because they didn't let people take anybody in you had to go through it by yourself. So that, whereas usually you can take one person to sit with you, I just felt so bad for people. And I got this down. It's no big deal to me, but if it's your first year, you really need somebody sitting there with you, and they couldn't do it. And we all had our masks on, it's like, couldn't even offer each other a smile, it's like,
it's rough. Yeah.
I'm so glad we're getting past it,
It'd be cool is if you put together some sort of little booklet for people that are newbies that have like drawing and like in lessons or instructions, draw a bird, right? Like something that they could take in.
Make your knitting.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it's therapeutic, right?
It's very therapeutic. And it's so much more fun than is just sitting on the phone playing games or texting people or browsing the web or whatever. And of course, the connection up there never works anyway. So the Wi-Fi is always sketchy. So yeah. It's a great way to pass the time. It's a very therapeutic way to pass the time, is to sketch or knit or do anything with your hands while you're there in the chair. So
it's all that presence, practicing presence, right? Back and forth.
Exactly.
So I was thinking back to what you said, and I was curious, do you find that you're always going to be a teacher? Is that connected to you?
I don't know. That is a really good question, because I've seen people step back from it, people who've taught for years and years, and they step back from it to work on their own stuff. It would not surprise me if I reach a point where, I just want to work on my own things, but that doesn't mean, I think even when we're not formally teaching, in a class setting, I think you're always, just by putting your work out there, you always have the opportunity as an artist to support other artists and teach or share. I think of it more as sharing especially when you're dealing with equals, that are like at a fair or something. You always have the opportunity to share your knowledge. And so, yeah, in that sense, I'll always be a teacher. So
there's definitely two kinds of people in those environments, of the sharers and then the non-sharers, right? Some people hide.
It's all secret sauce and you can't have it.
I remember going to a show. I remember going to a show last summer, and there was this beautiful frame that this guy had on his art. And I said to him, "Oh, where do you get this beautiful frames?" And you should have seen. You should have seen the glare he gave me. He was not going to tell me where he bought those frames. Yeah. It was just no. And I'm like, oh, I get them here and I can get them off of Amazon, and I'm telling people what to do all the time. So I think definitely you're I'm
pretty generous, but then there's other stuff that, like, I think you need to know your boundaries with what you're willing to share. And I would bet you're the same way, that there's like lots of information you give freely, but then there's some stuff that, I don't know, there's some stuff I hold back on. There's some stuff that is mine, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
But for the
true.
most part, resources well, like, like I do the Mosaic monsters and stuff, and people have asked me, oh, why don't you teach a class on the monsters? I'm like, no, not
That's
going to happen. I don't want to see a bunch of Mosaic monsters out there. It is my idea. It doesn't mean somebody can't go out and copy me and try to riff on what I'm doing. That it could happen, but I'm not going to teach it.
it is funny. It's funny. We
Guaranteed
constantly,
to happen.
I try to be spiritual and say, look, you always have new ideas coming. There's no limit to creativity, and there isn't. And yet I know exactly what you're talking about, because like you mentioned earlier that I did pillows in my booth. And I remember I did pillows, and then the very next show, like 5 other exhibitors came in and they had pillows. They had pillows, and I was like, well, so I didn't stand out. And, you're always like, how do you keep that? How do you keep one step ahead?
That's the thing you do. The thing is, Chris, you do keep one step ahead. And that's the point. When I was doing the dog portrait business full time, I would have people lift entire passages off my website and copy and paste it into their pet portrait websites. And I was one of the first people on the web doing digital pet portraits. And I had a lot of people copy my business model, word for word. I have one style, I'd have different styles. And one of them was the painterly style. And I have people who've never used the word painterly before. And then suddenly that's what they put on their descriptions and stuff like that. And my husband told me, because I get so frustrated. And he said, honey, and some people will just lift your images and resell your images. And that's where
that's the line, right?
Yeah. Desist. Okay. But my husband told me, he's like, people who copy are always going to be followers, and but you always have new ideas. You have no end to new ideas, and you're always going to be, and they also don't know how to lead. People who copy and follow can't lead, and you're a leader. You're a leader in your industry, and that's who you are. And so, be upset about it, but you can't let that negative energy around it, because I've seen people just lose their minds when people borrow from their ideas and stuff, and they just let it eat at them. And you can't let that negativity consume you, because you got to remember, you're a leader, you never run out of ideas. You're going to be 10 paces ahead of them, and they're not going to catch up with you.
Well, I love that. I love what you're saying, because if you hold on to that resentment, you pull yourself out of the channel of creativity. Because I think it's that channel of trust and love. That's where the ideas come. But if you're, and every day you have to say, I choose to let that go. Right. Because, this perfect example, just at the show, I did those little pictures, and sure enough, the guy across the way came over and, how did you print those? And where did you get the frames? And I'm like,
I know.
Because he saw the traffic,
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, yeah, you can find them on Walgreens. But I told him, and because, the next show I'll do, who knows, right?
Right.
Cups
you're going to be onto something else by the next show.
Right. And I love those monsters of yours. And I think you have a right to hold back, as an artist too, and say, hey, right. I don't want
it's mine. Yeah, exactly.
And there's someone they'll take a picture and try to imitate it, but
they'll still try to imitate, but that's okay.
What you're talking about is always, it's a little scary, but being on that leading edge, the leading edge of ideas and creativity, it's a place where you have to be brave, and you have to trust, and you have to have faith.
Yeah, definitely.
And most important, you have to monitor your energy. Like if you let anger and competition.
Yeah, exactly. And competition and having frenemies and people you compare yourself to, a little bit of it's kind of healthy, because it's motivating, to have somebody that you admire and are, I have a word for jealousy that I like. And this applies to my friends, like, people I love. If they get a huge commission and they're doing amazing stuff and stuff, I will call it being jelly instead of jealous, because jealous is such a negative word, and you think it's a destructive feeling. It's a negative emotion. Jealousy, like true jealousy, like, oh, I hate them, But when it's somebody I love, and I'm really proud of them and happy for them. But just a little bit, oh, I wish that was me.
So you soften it and call it jelly.
So I'm a little jelly of you today instead of jealous. So
I work on that, and I've gotten better with that. In fact, I found out yesterday that someone that was on the podcast recently is getting a really big order from another that has potential, and I felt really good for her. I was like, whoa. But I know what you're talking about. That's something I have always struggled with, is when I see somebody doing better, I immediately do get jealous. And then I have to remind myself, what someone taught me is what they're doing is proving that it's possible. So if you look at them instead of saying, look, they're showing me that it is possible for me to get that big order and sell $20,000 worth of paintings, right? Then it changes your attitude. For me, it has,
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, look, I can do that. Oh, it's possible. Yay, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's a challenge. It is a challenge.
It is.
So is there anything that we haven't talked about? I definitely would love to have you send some favorites of your art, and I'll put them sliding over, and they're beautiful. And I will reference your website. But is there any issues that you want to talk about one more word of advice for slowing down? Or
Oh, one more. No, everybody's got to find their speed level on their own. My slowing down might not be your slowing down. Everybody's got to find their own method.
So at least you acknowledge that.
Some people need to speed up. My husband teases. He says, "Yeah, she's learning to slow down so she can catch up with me."
Well, there you go. But that there's beauty in both, right?
Yeah, there is. Thanks for talking with me today. It's been fun. And as always, we ended up going off in directions that you never count on. So
no, you don't. It's always something interesting to learn. And I love talking to artists. And I would recommend you to anybody that's in Dallas, check out Rebecca's site and her classes, because it's so joyful. Go ahead.
One more thing. Can I do a pitch?
Yes, of course.
I just had the good fortune to be able to curate a show over at the Texas Discovery Gardens, and it's up right now through September. And I know these podcasts live, and people may be getting this a year from now. But yeah, if you're getting these currently, go to the Texas Discovery Gardens and see a show of Mosaic students from the CAC for the creative. These are all students at the Creative Arts Center, and I have some of my work there. And it's really a cool show because it's, curating it was easy, because we said, if you enter, you get in. Some of these people are brand new to Mosaic. So for some people, there's all different skill levels, some really amazing work. People have been doing it for years. And there's some brand new work from people they've just taken one class. And so it's all over the map. But even the beginning work is really, really good. And I'm super proud of my students. And so go see it. It's at the Texas Discovery Gardens from now until, I think, mid-September. So there's plenty of time to catch it.
And this is 2023, right? Yeah, we're 2023.
So. We're anyway, this is 2020. I know. I thought, should I pitch that? Because this is a podcast that lives on. But yes, 2023, and it's all on the theme of nature. So.
Oh, I love it. Well, I appreciate you coming back to the show, and I'm glad to hear that you're doing well and still churning out that beautiful artwork and modeling the spiritual artist energy. I love it. So
thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're welcome. We'll check back in again. And listeners, don't forget to follow this channel on YouTube. If you're watching it on YouTube, follow it, because there's more artists coming. And if you're listening to it on Spotify, make sure you follow the podcast itself, so it gets reminders, when new ones come out. And also just a little reminder that my book is still on Amazon. It's doing really well. It's selling about 4 a day. So go and get yourself a copy. I did add a couple chapters in January, and it's better than ever. So thank you for listening to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. Rebecca, thank you for being on the show. And it's been great. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.